Okay, that's better. Hi, I'm MJ and welcome to part 2 of my T-Witch series. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, go check that out. Just to recap, last time I figured out how I'm gonna make the outfit. I made some mock-ups to figure out how the outfit works, and I will be using those pieces as my pattern pieces for the actual garments. For this video, I'm going to be focusing on the underdress, which is kind of the more simple garment of the two. So this will be a more simple video, I guess. It's fairly straightforward, just a bodice, a skirt, some interesting details on the bodice and on the sleeves, which I think I will be focusing on most because I think that will be most interesting to watch. I will show you how I do the bias binding around the bodice front, and then also how I'm going to figure out the sleeve cuffs, because on my mock-up I just created a plain cuff, but if you look at the picture, it has some of the green fabric on it and some gold stripes as well. So I need to figure out that too, because last time I just made a single pattern piece for the cuff and didn't do anything fancy. You will see this in the other videos as well, especially when I start working on the overdress, is that I still have to figure out a lot of the design and the details and the decorations as I go. But for the previous video, I just wanted to figure out the basic shape of the garments, and I got that done. So now I'm ready to get started on the actual garments. So let's not waste any time and get started on that. Alright, so I've finished cutting out my pattern pieces. This right here is the skirt, front bodice, back bodice, sleeves. I also cut some pockets, and I cut some bias tape from my gold fabric that's going to go around the front edge and the neckline of the bodice. So now what I have to do is put all of this together. I'm not sure which part I'm going to start with. I might do the skirt first because it's easy, but then again, it's also kind of nice that it's out of the way for now. When it's put together, I need a place to hang it, basically. So I might actually do that last. I think I'll do the bodice first. For the sleeves, you'll notice that I cut out... Oh, sorry, that's out of frame. Got the sleeves right here. So for the sleeves, I cut out some of the green fabric as well. I did this wrong a bunch of times, actually. If you remember from the first video, I made the cuffs too narrow, and they wouldn't quite close around my wrist. So they basically met right at the seam here, and I should have added more seam allowance. So what I did, cutting out my actual fabric, first I repeated that same mistake, didn't add the extra seam allowance. Then I also realized that I had cut 4 out of the white fabric when the outside of the cuff needs to be green. So I can throw that away. So then I cut 2 each of the green and the white, made sure to add my seam allowance, and then I'm going to use some of the bias tape to put that around the outside edge of each cuff so that it will show up on the very edge once the seams are all in. The seams are quite noticeable. I used a calculator for this, where you cut a square and then fold it in half, cut it, attach it back together, and you end up with this spiral of bias tape. But I'm not liking how visible those seams are. So I might have to do one that is bigger, or just basically cut some bias strips and not do continuous bias. But I can use these as test scraps, I think. I might be able to use some of these, the bigger parts, on the cuffs maybe. That might work. Alright, well there's step 1 kind of thwarted. Anyway, I'm gonna get started on sewing together the bodice and figure out the bias tape so I can do the edges over here. Let's get started. messed up. I made a mistake. I was working on the sleeve cuffs and I sewed the ruffle to the lining of the sleeve, and then I sewed the outer fabric from the sleeve to all of that, and I turned it inside out. This one is still turned outside in, and after I turned it inside out, I realized that I put the ruffle on the wrong way. This is the wrong side of the fabric. This is supposed to be the right side of the fabric, which is on the inside of the cuff. So now I have to take all of this apart and redo it and try to do it without messing up, because these seam allowances are already trimmed, which is fun. However, as sort of a happy accident, while I was looking at this and trying it on, I kind of realized that I've messed up the proportions of the cuff as well. If you look at the image, the green part is not quite as wide as this. So I think I want to adjust this. I'm going to take off this gold fabric here, I think, and then just take off a little bit off of the cuff over there, and then reattach the gold a little bit closer, and then we'll also redo the ruffle, of course, and make sure that it's the right way out. So, you know, issues aside, I do think this looks cool. Okay, I don't have a lot of charge in this battery, so I'll make it quick. I've got the pieces of the bodice ready. The sleeves are attached, the cuffs are attached. So what I need to do now is create the binding around the neckline and down the center front. So for that, I first need to create some long strips of bias tape from my gold fabric. What I'm going to have to do with basically all of the things that I make from my gold fabric is make sure that they are one continuous piece and have as few seams as possible. So I'm going to grab a measuring tape and see how much gold fabric I need for each side of the bodice, and then I'll just cut out something on the diagonal that is exactly that length, just to avoid having seams in visible places. But yeah, I really like how this is turning out so far. But next up, making some bias tape so I can bind the edges of the bodice. Okay, so I just showed you all this footage of me cutting out the bias tape and putting it on the bodice, and I've been hand sewing the insides down, at least on the right side. I still have to do it on the left side. But on the mock-up, I was thinking that the bias tape that I used there was looking a little bit wide, so I wanted to go a little bit more delicate on the actual garment, except that now that I have most of it on, I'm thinking that I went too far. Especially if you compare the gold edging that I made for the cuffs to what I've put on the bodice edge. In the picture, those are much more similar in width, and now they are just too different. They're just too different, and I also do not want to be redoing the cuffs. So I think I have to redo it. I don't like this. Well, that'll teach me not to do a mock-up of that part too, I guess. Time to take this apart and try again. So I have my skirt ready and I have my bodice ready. The next step is going to be to attach these two together. After, I'm going to put in a zipper in the back and then close up the back seam of the skirt all the way, because right now it is not attached at all along the back. After the zipper, I still need to attach some closure to these cuffs, and then I need to hem the skirt. I was going to say after the cuffs I'm done, but I'm not done. It still needs hemming, and for some reason I always forget that hemming is a thing. My brain just goes, oh, we're done putting it together. We're done. No, there's still a hem to be done. But I don't mind hems. I like doing hems, so it'll be fine. But to get there, I need to finish this first. So let's attach these two together. So scratch that. I am not ready to put the bodice and skirt together because I was trying to do two things at once and kind of didn't realize that they would mess with each other. Let me explain. My plan for attaching these two together was to sew the skirt to the outer fabric of the bodice and then fold that over to the inside and hand stitch the lining over top. And then the skirt would be encased between these two and the inside would be nice and tidy. However, with the way that I did this center seam here with the bias binding, that does not work. So now I need to figure out if maybe I can undo this part way, sew together the skirt and the bodice, and then, oh man, this is breaking my brain. I'm just gonna have to try some stuff. I'm gonna try to undo some of this and then see if I can still do my original plan, but I'm kind of worried that I won't be able to. I might have to hand sew this seam in the center here, but I don't mind the hand sewing, and it's going to be a lot easier to manipulate this by hand than through the machine. I might not film this because it's going to be a lot of undoing and figuring out, but I at least wanted to show you that I kind of messed up here, and now I have to try to figure out a solution. Minor setback, but it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. In the end, I decided to unpick the bias tape and center seam for a few centimeters so I could separate the lining and outer fabric of the bodice. Then I hand sewed the bias tape back to the outer fabric and sewed up the center seam again. Now I could sew the bodice to the skirt. I pressed that seam line up towards the bodice and then folded the edge of the lining over that, and also folded down the inside of the bias tape. Now everything is pinned to hand sew all of that down, and that should leave me with a clean inside and no evidence of any surgery on the outside. We are nearly done with the underdress. I put in a zipper and I sewed up the back seam. So now all we need to do is hem it and add some closures to these sleeve cuffs. Now, typically when I hem a skirt, I make some bias tape, or I grab bias tape from my stash and I just use that to hem it. I turn the bias tape to the inside and then I hand sew it down. This usually creates a very even hem without puckering, and it looks very neat and tidy. I do think I'm going to do something similar for this dress. Since it is a very long and white skirt, the hem is gonna get dirty. And not just from the hem being very long, but you know, my shoes are gonna touch the inside of the dress there. So what I'm thinking to do is to create a facing and make that a little bit bigger and wider than the bias tape hems that I usually make. Just to give, you know, the area where my feet will hit the fabric as I walk a little bit of extra protection against scuffs and dirt. And the facing like that I could also remove and replace with cleaner fabric if I need to at some point. So the way that I'm going to do that is by tracing the bottom edge of the skirt pattern and then just measuring up however wide I want that facing to be. I haven't made my mind up how wide I want it to be, but I'm guessing about 10 centimeters or something like that. So then I will cut that out of the white fabric, which I still have lots of, and attach it to the hem all the way around. And I probably will still attach it on the inside with hand stitching, because that will look cleaner on the outside. So yeah, this dress has been hanging in my closet for a few days so that the skirt in the fabric has some time to stretch under its own weight and, you know, the forces of gravity. I haven't checked yet whether it has warped significantly, so I guess I'd better do that first and see if I need to trim any parts off of the hem to keep it even. This fabric does feel like a very stable fabric, so I'm kind of suspecting that I won't have to. And then lastly, I'm going to put some snaps in the cuffs over here so that these will close however tight I want them to be. So yeah, let's try this on and create a facing. And the underdress is all done. Is there really anything else I need to say about this? I do want to say one last thing about the sleeves. I did in the end decide to make the little ruffle at the edge here just a little bit shorter. I was going back and forth between this outfit and the reference picture, and I kept thinking that maybe the way that she's holding her hands and the angle, that the amount of ruff that I had was just a little bit too much, so I trimmed off a little bit and then rehemmed it, which was kind of finicky, but not too bad. So that's the only other change I made to the dress. The hem facing is a little bit more visible than I thought it would be, but it's fine. I mean, it's a white fabric, so that's always going to be a little bit see-through, and if you layer it, it's going to be more white than where it's not layered. That's just part of having a white fabric, I guess. So with all that being said, I should just go ahead and get started on the overdress. I'm a little nervous, I have to say. I really don't know how that's gonna work out, if it's gonna be easy or if it's gonna be hard, but I guess I just have to do it. At any rate, I'm very pleased with how this is looking so far. Yeah, I can't wait to put the overdress on and see the whole thing together. So I hope you guys enjoyed this part. I guess I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and bye. And I have those pieces ready. No. So I took apart the mock-up that I made last time, and we'll put them... No. God dang it. Nee, het klinkt beter in mijn hoofd dan wanneer ik het uitspreek. Of dan kom je er halverwege achter dat je niet zo ver was in je hoofd als dat je dacht. So, you know, issues aside, yeah, I'll have to think about what... Alright, I'm gonna be completely washed out by my dress, but that's what you get when you make something white. Cut it out of the fabric. Okay, yeah, I think that works. Yeah, good enough. I suppose I'm just doing it anyway.